Gather round me, friends, I'll tell a little story of the many years I spent upon the farm.
Hello, I am Ruth Lorraine Norris. That was my maiden name. I was born in a little hospital in High River, Alberta. The first of 4 kids, and no, we're not goats. All us girls were normal. My brother, I'm not sure about. It was a fun time. When we went back to got out of the hospital and went to the farm, I was greeted by my mother's brother who lived with us. He was my 12-year-old uncle. That was little Uncle Leslie. Being the oldest one, I ended up doing chores all the time, which I loved. It meant no housework. The first chore I did was my uncle helped me, and we loaded my little red wagon with wood and hauled it to the house for the furnace and the stove. We couldn't push a button and turn the thermostat up to get the heat. The second chore was gathering the eggs. And you learned to put your hand in the nest, and it was open at the back, and when the chicken wouldn't get out, you pushed her out the back. Sometimes she pecked at you, and sometimes she was cooperative. But she always let you take the eggs, and they tasted so good the next day. I was riding horseback before I could walk. First recollection I have is a picture of me sitting in front of the saddle with my dad. And when I turned 6, I was doing all the chores, morning and evening. I got to know all the animals really good. We had horses, milk cows, pigs, chickens, and turkeys. And I loved them all. At 6, I had a Shetland pony, and I rode him to school, to grade 1. Rode 4 miles to a 1-room schoolhouse that had 12 grades. And boy, did we learn. Because you never just listen to your own grade, you listen to all 12 of them. It was a good lesson. Taught us to concentrate. And I've been asked, where do you keep your horse when you're in school? We kept it in a barn. There was a barn on the property with stalls, and we went out and watered it at recess and lunch, fed it, and looked after it during the day when we were outside. That was the best time. As I rode to school, I met all my friends along the road that lived along the same road as me. Sometimes we'd switch horses. One girl didn't like big horses. She liked my little Shetland, and I hated my Shetland. So her and I would switch till my dad found out. Then he wasn't impressed. But that horse got me cookies and everything. I needed a switch to tap him on the behind to get him to go past our property line. And one day I dropped it. And of course, 6 years old, I didn't know what to do. I was sitting outside the neighbor's house, crying my eyes out. And she came out and asked what was wrong. I told her. She got me a new switch and brought me a plate of cookies. Well, that worked for a week. I dropped it on purpose every day, till Mom found out and told her not to give me any more cookies. Then I would do it just to talk to her. I only went to that school for 1 year. Then they put us on a bus and sent us to a town school that was 11 miles away. And those kids in grade 2 didn't know anything like we knew in grade 1. It was so boring. My granddad raised our racehorses. He owned the farm we were on. My dad worked it. And he had a big stallion. His name was Pagan Star. Every time my granddad walked in the stall, the stallion bit him. And I ducked around the corner and I laughed because Grandpa was mean to that horse. I could walk in, the horse would put his head over my shoulder, give me a hug, because I was never mean to him. He was my buddy. When the milk cows had their calves out in the pasture, we had to move them into the barn right away, because if we didn't take them away, the cows didn't give milk. So Dad would get me on the horse. We'd go up to where the calf was and put it over the front of my saddle, and I'd take it back to the barn. Sometimes old mother cow tried to go over the fence to get at me. Actually, it was to get at her baby. But I don't know, it was great growing up on the farm. I rode horseback every day for 17 years. Then when Grandpa sold the farm, we moved outside of Calgary to an acreage, so I still got to ride. But I liked the pigs, I liked everything but the chickens and turkeys. And their pens stunk when you walked in them. I used to have to clean them. And at night we'd have to go and get the turkeys out of the trees, because if not, the coyotes would end up getting them. We'd take them out of the trees, put them in their pen for the night, and close the gate. That morning we still had the same amount of turkeys. But they tasted so good. Oh yeah, we had dogs and cats too, all the time. A funny story to tell about my brother. My sister and I found a nest of baby mice, and they are so ugly because they have no fur, just pink skin, and oh, they're terrible. Of course, neither her nor I would pick the mouse up. My brother come along and he says, hey, I can do it. Picked it up like this and goes, ah, and it hit my face and then landed on the ground. He ran out of the barn and it stood behind Dad's back. I come out, Dad says, what's going on? I said, I'm gonna kill him. But Dad always stuck up for him because he was the only boy. I went to a town school in grade 2, right through grade 9. Then we moved to the acreage in Calgary, and I went to Western Canada High for the high school years. But growing up on the farm was so neat. If you ever get a chance and you've got kids raising them on the farm, there's always something to do and it doesn't cost you a fortune. Well, I guess that's it. I can't think of anything more without going off the track, and I could talk all day about the rest of my life, but we'll leave that for another time. Thank you. Yeah, I almost forgot. We had Saskatoons and choke cherries on our property. Choke cherries weren't very good. They were pretty sour, but they made great jelly. We'd go out and pick Saskatoons, and Mom would come along and look in my pail. There wouldn't be any in it, but I was purple from ear to ear because they were so good. I couldn't put them in the pail. I had to eat them. I also spent a lot of time with my great-grandmother. Being the oldest one, I was the only one that could spend time with her. And they'd bus us home from school early if there was going to be a storm. And I'd make 2 phone calls, one to her saying, can I come visit? Of course, she said yes. And the other one to my mother, can I? And she'd say yes. But my grandmother and I played, great-grandmother and I played Chinese checkers every night. She consulted a Ouija board in the morning to ask if she should go out or not. If it told her to go, she'd go. If it said no, she'd stay in. And it really worked for her. It's scary, but it worked. I guess that was all I wanted to add. Thank you.
Gather round me, friends, I'll tell a little story of the many years I spent upon the farm. While the story I will tell, many will remember well that little whitewashed building on the farm.